Coming up, the school district gets a train in the mouth.
There's an old-fashioned home in New Hampshire with a light in the window for me.
It was the 29th of October, 1969. Back then, there was no shopping plaza here. Rather, there were mills and houses here. And railroad tracks that still connected Jaffrey to the greater world. Although there were few trains running and the tracks, they were in terrible condition. I remember the trains were regularly going off the tracks due to poor maintenance. And those trains that got into town came here very slowly. The W.W. Cross Company, they made carpet tacks and other brads and nails, and they depended on the railroad, and on this day, 2 boxcars had arrived via the Boston and Maine freight train. The cars carried raw material for the factory. Freight conductor Tom Walsh of Newton, Massachusetts, unhitched the 2 cars, and he was walking back toward the engine when he saw that the unhitched boxcars were slowly moving down the tracks. Well, he yelled at the engineer to get the train going and to catch up with the runaway cars. He then jumped aboard the first car as it slowly moved down the tracks toward Peterborough. Nowadays, there are no railroad tracks left. There's only this trestle. But in 1969, the railroad tracks paralleled the Kentucky River between Jaffrey and Peterborough, and because it was right beside the river, it ran, of course, downhill. And that meant that the cars picked up speed all the way down to Peterborough. Not only that, but there are 10, count them, 10 places where the railroad tracks crossed roads between Jaffrey and Peterborough, including this down from the town line between Jaffrey and Peterborough on busy Route 202. And the crossing that was here just up from the old Noon Mills on the same road. Conductor Walsh was holding on to the staple and the hand grip on the boxcar, and he was waving and yelling at everybody he passed. George Fish was on his way home up Hillcrest Road here when he saw the boxcars go by. George Fish later told the newspaper that he couldn't believe his eyes. Now, I remember when here in Peterborough, New Hampshire, right there where it says number 12 Depot Square, there was the most beautiful train depot you ever saw. Of course, by 1969, that had been torn down. But before then, the railroad came right up the river valley here and came right through, keeping the Kentucky River to its right, went right across Main Street in Peterborough and right down the Kentucky Valley. But by 1969, they'd torn up all the tracks on the other side of the street there, and the train just deadheaded here. It stopped right here behind the Peterborough Diner. Well, the 2 runaway cars were barreling away down toward the town. About this time, they started the engine up in Jaffrey, and they were coming down, going as fast as they could, trying to catch up with the 2 cars. They figured they could hook onto the back and maybe slow them down, but the cars were way, way, way too far ahead. By the time they crossed the tracks, and the tracks used to be right here on Route 101, by the time they went across this section of 101, they were doing 40 miles an hour. And the conductor was hanging off the front of the car, and he was yelling, "Get out of the way, get out of the way." Luckily, the cars did get out of the way, and these boxcars went barreling right through here on toward town. Now the tracks stopped right, well, just about right here. There was this triangular thing that was made out of wood, and that was the end of the tracks. That showed that. But that wasn't going to stop the boxcars, and the boxcars were barreling toward us. Now, about this time, the Peterborough police are aware of what's coming down, and they have stopped all the traffic here on Main Street. There is no traffic, and sure enough, down the tracks come these boxcars, and as they hit this yard, the conductor, that is Conductor Walsh, he jumps off. Now, he's all bloodied up and scraped, but there are no broken bones. And then all hell broke loose. The boxcars ran into that stop thing that we had at the end there, that triangle thing, and went right over it. Now, there are no tracks here. But the boxcars come right across the street and into that building you see over there. Now, that building at that time housed the Kentucky Valley School District offices. And I got to tell you, the people in there, they were surprised. Nobody in the superintendent's office was hurt that day. As a matter of fact, aside from the bruises and contusions and scrapes and what have you that were suffered by the conductor, Conductor Walsh, nobody who had anything to do with the runaways that day were hurt. The only pain that was suffered that day was suffered by the Boston and Maine Railroad. Terrible publicity.